Can you walk more than 50 metres?
Yes.
Can you raise either arm as if to put something in your top pocket?
Yes. Can I ask you a question? Are you medically qualified? I've had a major heart attack. I've been told by my doctor I'm not supposed to go back to work yet. So what are you doing here?
Daniel Blake, ganhador em 2016 da Palma de Ouro, prêmio máximo do Festival de Cannes. É o filme mais novo de Ken Loach.
You have to apply online, sir.
The Palme d'Or goes to I, Daniel Blake.
O veterano diretor britânico, hoje com 80 anos, já tinha vencido em Cannes 10 anos antes, com Ventos da Liberdade.
Weapons are supplied. On the train, or else I'll blow your fucking head off.
Os dois filmes confirmam Loach como um dos diretores mais ostensivamente políticos na primeira divisão do cinema internacional contemporâneo. Daniel Blake expõe as barreiras sociais e burocráticas dos mais necessitados de ajuda no sistema assistencial de um país rico, o Reino Unido. O filme teve boa recepção de público, inclusive no Brasil, onde a plateia com frequência aplaudia de pé ao final. Não ganhou indicação nenhuma para o Oscar, mas recebeu o prêmio BAFTA em seu país como o melhor filme britânico do ano.
I, Daniel Blake.
Loach aproveitou a ocasião de gala, a seu estilo, para acusar o governo britânico de indiferença aos que dependem de benefícios sociais, como o personagem Daniel Blake.
It's a brutality that extends to keeping out refugee children that we promised to help, and that's a disgrace too.
O milênio foi ao Soho, bairro boêmio de Londres, conhecido pelos muitos restaurantes, bares e sex shops, mas também sede de empresas produtoras de cinema e TV, como a 16 Films, de Ken Loach, onde o encontramos para uma conversa sobre cinema e política.
Your new film, Daniel Blake, was showing in Brazil, had good reactions, but I heard a peculiar reaction that I would like to hear from you. People were saying, well, see the problems with the welfare system? If it happens in a rich country, what hopes do we have that it can be adopted in a poor country? It's an interesting idea.
Yes. Well, the problem with a rich country is that it's rich for some people, and there's still a large group of poor people, and that's for a reason we all know very well but refuse to acknowledge, and that is that this is a society, a capitalist society based on a capitalist mode of production, and that generates the very rich, and it creates a large exploited working class, and the poorest of the working class, the most vulnerable, have to be punished for their poverty because they have to understand it's their fault. If you're out of a job, it's your fault. If you're poor, it's your fault. You're not competent. You're lazy. Because if it's not the fault of the poor, it's the fault of the system. And they don't want you to challenge the system. So there's an ideological reason why the poor are made to feel that their poverty is their own fault. And when we talk about being a rich society, there are people here, last year, the time of figures, 2015, there's a lot of food being given out by charities. 1,100,000 bags of food were given to families in that year by one group of food banks alone because they couldn't eat because they were so hungry. Now reflect on that. We're not a rich country for everyone. We're a rich country for those at the top, and there's desperate poverty at the bottom.
If you've been deemed fit for work, your only option is job seekers allowance.
Well, I want to appeal.
You have to apply online, sir.
I was a carpenter. I've never been anywhere near a computer.
So you need to run the mouse up the screen. No.
What now?
No, not like that.
I'm just going round in circles.
Your film shows this story about this carpenter who needs the system and faces difficulty in dealing with it. as you said, the Conservative Party has always been a reluctant supporter, if a supporter at all, of this system.
They're not a supporter. They're not a supporter.
They're not a supporter. Or sometimes they pretend to support it.
Pretend, yeah.
But in fact, the Labour Party has not always been a supporter of them. Well, if you think about the times of Gordon Brown and Tony Blair, they were not supporters of the system either.
No, well, there's this is a problem with the Labour Party. It's always been a social democratic party. That is, it supports the idea of capitalism and that you share out the crumbs that fall from the table to the working class below. And while the changes that were made, the good changes that were made after the war, you know, the welfare state, it was there to enable capitalism to work better by having a secure workforce that was healthy, that was well housed, that was felt secure. So while on the one hand there's a rhetoric about an equal society, the politics of the Labour Party has always been to enable capitalism to work in a slightly fairer way than it would otherwise do. And that's the flaw, because of course capitalism develops as competition grows, as monopolies develop, as big corporations take over from the family-owned business. As big corporations develop, they compete against each other. As they compete against each other, they drive down the value of labour, because they've got to increase their profits. So labour they want it cheap, they want it vulnerable. As they make labour more vulnerable, unemployment develops, poor working conditions develop, temporary work develops, and the working class is more vulnerable. So that's the problem. And Labour has followed that. Blair, he had a slogan actually when he came to power. The election slogan that first got him to power was "Labour means business," and we thought it meant, you know, it's going to roll up its sleeves to do work, but not at all. It meant Labour means big business.
In the aftermath of the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Do I dare ask you about Trump?
I mean, I think his unpleasantness as a person is, in a way, is linked to his appeal, because those people who are feeling angry and alienated, when they hear their own feelings reflected back to them in crude language, in a way, it allows them to be crude and brutal as well. So, but I think underlying that is, and what is so duplicitous about Trump, is that he's pretending to speak for the working class. Actually, he's speaking for capital, and he's you know, it's the old bread and circuses. You know, we'll bit of entertainment to make you think we're on your side, but actually we're going to screw you.
You, Ben? You, Ruben? Dolores? You, Juan?
Em Pão e Rosas, Ken Loach já antecipava o problema que os imigrantes começam a enfrentar com a nova administração Trump. Duas irmãs mexicanas, Maia e Rosa, trabalham numa empresa que presta serviços de limpeza. A luta por melhores direitos trabalhistas leva o grupo a travar uma guerra contra os patrões. Como consequência, enfrentam uma ameaça ao seu sustento, os conflitos dentro da família e, sobretudo, o risco de serem expulsas do país.
Shut up, Maya. Shut up.
I am telling you that I did it.
Well, to think that a billionaire could speak for the working class is only a bit rich, but...
Well, yes, there's that, but the politics of it are more serious than that. I mean, I think, yes, I mean, everything about it is crude and brutal and unpleasant, but it's the politics where he will enable capital to move, to twist another turn in exploitation.
O alvo mais constante deste cineasta irredutível em suas convicções socialistas é seu próprio país, o Reino Unido, onde nasceu em ambiente e família de classe trabalhadora. Já adulto, sob a influência marxista, a visão política de Loach virou à esquerda. E ao começar carreira de diretor na televisão, depois no cinema, nunca separou arte e ideologia. Em suas obras de ficção, ele denuncia continuamente as mazelas que vê na realidade do capitalismo mundial.
Your 1966 films for television, Kathy Comes Home, already touched on issues of, it has become a classic, already touching on the problems of the Social Security, as you prefer to call the welfare system. And now Daniel Blake goes back to the same area. Is the situation getting worse despite the fact that Britain 1966 was certainly poorer than Britain today?
Oh, it's much worse today. It's worse. A big reason it's worse is that after the war, we did Kathy Come Home in the 60s, mid 60s, and at that time the consciousness that people had after the war was still in place, weaker but in place, and that consciousness said the public good is what we aspire to, that we work together for the public good, for the benefit of all. So while there was a housing issue in the 60s, the sense was we were collectively responsible. Then all that changed when Thatcher got elected, and the public good was replaced by private greed. And so it was the individual. It wasn't what we can do as, I mean, you know, in her words, notorious words, there's no such thing as society. There's just individuals and families. Well, that gave rise to, I don't care about you, I care about me.
But as you say, things are getting worse. Do you get discouraged?
Well, I don't personally. I mean, there are so many, hundreds of thousands of people who are working, who are not lucky enough to be able to make films, but just work at a grassroots level to keep people together, to support people. So why do I have to get discouraged? It's the I would say millions of people who do their best in such dark times. So
and in the sense, I say discouraged in the sense that I keep making my films, I keep banging on this issue, but it doesn't seem to improve.
It changes all the time, it changes. I mean, the arrival of Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell was an extraordinary development, because I mean, everyone was against them. You know, pick up any newspaper, even the so-called left-wing Guardian, hostile to Corbyn. BBC, hostile to Corbyn. Research has shown how hostile they are. And yet 500,000 people joined the Labour Party to support him. 500,000.
David Hodge, the Conservative leader of Surrey County Council, planned to hold a referendum for a 15% increase in council tax. And at the last minute, it was called off.
Your films, from Daniel Blake going all the way back, shows not only to the people the solidarity and the problems that people have, but you show that they fight back. Resistance, how important is that?
Yeah, well, people will fight back. I mean, we just had a big dispute on one of the private railway companies. I'm sure you know about it, Southern Rail, where again the company are trying to cut the labour force in a way that's unsafe. It's the drivers who opposed it. The weakness, again, that dispute exposes the weakness, which is that one trade union has done a deal in the teeth of opposition from another trade union. And that's where we need solidarity, is the two unions actually stand side by side, you know, don't allow themselves to be picked off one at a time. But yes, there's resistance. People always resist.
Loach se vê ao mesmo tempo reverenciado e criticado. Atua não apenas no campo da arte, mas também se envolve com frequência em protestos, manifestações de rua e ações diversas em ataques ao que denuncia como injustiças na sociedade.
Because you're right. Because you're right. There is no democracy there. There is no democracy there.
Yeah, your films follow a line of social concern that is obviously not what predominates in the commercial circuit out there. There's more focus on action, comic books, and adaptations, special effects, that kind of thing. Superheroes. Do you think they're winning?
Who are winning?
These groups of people who push for that kind of film, winning in the sense that they are predominant.
Well, I mean, big commercial cinema, yes. I mean, of course, will seem to be predominant because they own the cinemas. You know, I mean, again, it's the market. You know, if big capital invests in big productions, they make commodities like McDonald's. You say McDonald's is winning over a good small cafe that serves good food by the man who cooks it himself. Of course, they seem bigger. Starbucks seems bigger than a small coffee house run by somebody who likes coffee. They are bigger, but that's capital, isn't it? They invest, they judge the commodity not according to any objective criteria. They judge it simply in terms of what will make the most money. Yeah, that's the name of the game.
You know, viewing habits today also include obviously television, which is your background. You know, you've done television before quite a bit. And there seems to be a new trend of good quality drama on television. At least that's how the critics see it. Is that how you see it? You see television moving in that direction, away from just pure entertainment?
No.
You don't?
No. I think they've refined, like commercial cinema, they've refined the formulae. You know, they've refined the process and the style and the concept, and they then hammer their projects into that concept. And so they'll take ideas that are quite current, I don't know, like child abuse or child abduction or unsolved murders or whatever, and they'll take ideas that are topical, that are current, that dominate the news, and they'll fashion them into a very well sculpted series. I mean, there's a formula. You know, it has to be a series. There has to be a hook, but the style, the pattern, is very formulaic. And the problem is that certainly the television business I know, it used to be the case that the people at the top were quite small in number, and the people at the bottom, the producers, the directors, the writers, were quite big in number. That pyramid is now inverted. So there's a huge number of, or apparently a huge number of producers, commissioning editors, script editors, heads of channel, heads of this, heads of pencils, heads of everything, all telling the director and the writer what to do. So that they all have an opinion, and originality is squeezed out, because it's like, you know, it's like a horse designed by a committee. It's a camel. And so they squeeze out the originality, they squeeze out the single voice, and writers become like good prisoners. They know how to please the people above. So they adopt the formula. But the originality, the voice of the writer is lost by being hammered into shape by people who are after a commodity.
How about the impact on viewing habits of new technologies such as the internet? Do you feel that? Do you think there's an impact there?
Yes, I think there is. I mean, I'm the wrong generation to understand it, because I can barely turn on a phone. So, but I think the impact is to fragment, is to... my hunch is, and it's no more than a hunch, I haven't done any research or read any, but my hunch is that things are reduced in scale, in the sense that, you know, things have to be cut fast, things have to move, you know, you have to, because the zap button means if if the pause is held too long, for some people they just zap to the next.
If there isn't a car crashing,
something, it increases the pressure for instant action, instant gratification and so on, constant shocks. You know, when language is reduced to texts, when tweets and all the rest of it just reduce complexities to a few sound bites. When people are, have the earphones in all the time and we become isolated and atomized and fragmented, that fragmentation, that reduction into small little chunks of a few words, abbreviations, everything's tending towards fragmentation, people being locked into their own world. It operates against collective enjoyment, collective understanding.
And as part of that effect, don't you think that filmmakers like you and some others who try a different approach run the risk of just preaching to the converted, because people just won't go?
Well, all you can do is to be true to the material, all you can do is to be true to the situations you find, to your understanding of how society works, to the consequences for people, and trust that in the end, if you get it anywhere near right, it will connect. And it seems to, I mean, I think others would take a different tack and say, well, we've got to use the contemporary idiom in order to get the message through, but that always seems to me to destroy the message. Mm-hmm. If your point is about the value and the complexity of people and their responses, then if you make it jump about all over the place, you destroy that. Okay.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
That's very good.
So what are you doing up here?
We got in a bit of trouble. We was in a homeless hostel for about 2 years.
They couldn't give you anywhere near your family?
No, not in London.
Your only option is job seekers allowance.
Well, I want to appeal.
You have to apply online, sir.
I was a carpenter. I've never been anywhere near a computer.
You need to run the mouse up the screen. No.
Not now?
No, not like that.
I'm just going round in circles.
Good morning, Mr. Blake. I'm appointed to carry out assessments for employment and support allowance. Can you walk more than 50 metres?
Yes.